Welcome to the Hindu News Analysis by Shankar IAS Academy for the date 10th of October 2020. The list of news articles taken up for today's analysis is given here for your reference. Let us now begin our analysis. This editorial talks about the upcoming United States presidential elections that are to be held on November 3rd, 2020. See, there is an interesting concept behind holding the US presidential elections on the first Tuesday of the month of November. This concept of uniform time, that is the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November, is based on a law that was passed in 1845. Now, why Tuesday? Because in US, Sunday was considered a day of worship and Wednesday was a market day for the farmers, and Monday was avoided to enable traveling of voters in advance to vote on Tuesday. So this is the interesting reason behind conducting the elections on the first Tuesday in the month of November. Now today, as a part of our analysis, we will compare the office of Indian President and the United States President in some matters, and we will discuss how the United States President gets elected. See, in your mains exam under General Studies paper 2, there is a syllabus comparison of the Indian constitutional scheme with that of the other countries. And USA is also a democracy similar to India. If you remember, last year there was a question in General Studies paper 2 where the question was, what can France learn from the Indian constitution's approach to secularism? So you can expect such questions in your mains exam. So let us try to compare few aspects of the office of president between India and United States. The relevant syllabus is given here for your reference. First, let us see the form of government that is prevailing in India and USA. As we know, in India, we have the parliamentary system of government. Whereas if you look at USA, it is a presidential system of government. First, let us look at India. See, Indian constitution establishes parliamentary system at the center and also at the state level. Here, the parliamentary system is based on the principle of cooperation and coordination between the legislative and executive organs of the government. And these are some of the features of the parliamentary form of government in India that is given for your reference. Now, if you look at US, the presidential system is based on the doctrine of separation of powers between the legislature and the executive. So, the legislature will function separately and the executive arm of the government will function separately. Now, let us try to compare certain important aspects of the office of president between United States and India. First, in the United States, the president is both the head of state and the head of government. Now, if you look at India, the president is the head of the state and the prime minister is the head of the government. So that's why we call president as the nominal head and prime minister as the real head. Next, the United States president has the power either to sign a legislation into law or to veto bills that are enacted by the Congress. The United States Congress may override a veto, but only with 2/3 vote of both the houses. Like how in India we have the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, in United States it is the House of Representatives and the Senate, where Senate is the upper house, similar to Rajya Sabha. So the US Congress that comprises of both these houses has to override a veto, but only with 2/3 vote. So this overriding with higher majority by the Congress is called as a qualified veto. Now, the significant feature is that the United States President can veto the bills enacted by the United States National Legislature, which is the Congress. On the other hand, if you see, the office of Indian President exercises suspensive veto in addition to withholding assent and keeping the bill pending for assent for an indefinite period. Now, if you look in case of suspensive veto, the Indian President returns a bill for reconsideration of the Parliament. If the bill is passed again by the Parliament with or without the amendments, then the President is bound to give assent to that particular bill. So here, the presidential veto is overridden simply by same required ordinary majority and not like a higher majority as required in USA. So this is another important difference. Next, in terms of foreign policy, the United States President has the power to negotiate, make and sign treaties. However, such treaties must be ratified by 2/3 of the Senate, which is the upper house of the US Congress. And this is as per the United States Constitution. Whereas, if you look at India, the Prime Minister, through the Ministry of External Affairs, negotiates the bilateral and international treaties and agreements. That is why most of the time we see political visits by the Prime Minister and the Minister of External Affairs in case of India. Whereas you can see more political visits by the President in case of USA. Now, let us discuss in detail about how the United States President is elected. First, let us talk about the basic eligibility for a presidential candidate. To become United States President, the candidate must be a natural born citizen. That is, a person who was United States citizen at birth, then who is at least 35 years old and who shall be United States resident for at least 14 years. Now let us see the stages of the presidential election in case of United States. The first stage in the United States presidential election is primaries and caucuses. See, many individuals with a single party may want to become the President of United States. Each person will have their own idea on how the government should work. So at this stage, all the potential candidates campaign around the country and try to compete in order to win the favor of their party members and to get the party's nomination as presidential candidate. So this is where the primaries and caucuses come in. Caucuses are basically private meetings that are run by the political parties. In a caucus, the party members select the best party candidate through a series of discussion and votes. And the state primaries are run by the state and the local governments. In the primaries, the party members vote in a state election for the best candidate who they want to represent them in the general election. So you can see there is some difference between how primaries and the caucuses run. Though both these run differently, they both serve the same purpose. That is, they let the states to choose the nominees of the major political parties for the general election. At the end of this stage, the candidate who receives a majority of the party's delegates will win the nomination. Now coming to the second stage of the United States presidential elections, which is the national conventions. After the primaries and caucuses, each party holds a national convention to select a final presidential nominee. In other words, we can say that the election of presidential candidate of the party from the primaries and caucuses is confirmed through vote of the delegates at the national convention. Now, if no candidate gets the prescribed majority of a party's delegates during the primaries and the caucuses, then the National Convention delegates choose the nominee of the party through additional rounds of voting. At this stage, the party's presidential nominee announces her or his choice for the vice president, who is called as the running mate. And we know that in case of the Democratic Party in the United States, Joe Biden is the presidential candidate and he announced Kamala Harris as his choice for the vice president. And similarly, in case of the Republican Party, the President Donald Trump and the Vice President Mike Pence are rerunning again for the office of President and Vice President respectively. So after this, the presidential candidates of the political parties campaign throughout the country to win the support of the general population for the general election. So now the candidates representing the major parties are ready. Now comes the third stage, which is the general election. On election day, people in every state cast their vote for one president. Here, when people cast their vote, they're not voting to select the president directly based on the count of their votes casted. Rather, they're actually voting for a group of people called as electors. The number of electors in a state is equal to the total number of senators and representatives in United States Congress from a particular state. So based on this, the total number of electors who form the electoral college is 538 in United States. Therefore, there are 538 electoral votes. So this is how the general elections happen in United States. After the general elections is over on November 3rd, the final stage comes where the electors of the electoral college will cast their votes. Each elector will cast one vote. This year, this event is scheduled to be conducted on December 14 following the general election on 3rd of November. Now the candidate who gets 270 electoral votes or more than this will become the winner, and the Congress will certify the electoral college vote on 6th January 2021 and will officially declare the president who will assume office at the inauguration ceremony, which will be conducted on 20th January 2021. Now if no candidate receives a majority at the electoral votes of the electoral college, then the House of Representatives chooses the president and the Senate chooses the vice president. So this is how the United States presidential elections happen. This might sound a bit complicated, but just try to understand the process behind how the president and the vice president of United States get elected. Now, if you look at this editorial, the author of this editorial states that the United States election has become more uncertain with Donald Trump having tested positive for COVID-19 as it may affect the campaigning for the general elections. He also states that it is difficult to assess the impact of pandemic and that the opinion polls where the Democratic Party nominee Joe Biden is leading could actually be misleading. Why? Because the opinion polls in the year 2016 portrayed that Hillary Clinton, who represented Democrats, was leading. However, if you see, Donald Trump won that particular election. But the author tells that if we go along with the history of the United States elections, the Democrat pair, that is Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, may have a greater chance to win the elections. And the author has discussed elaborately about this interesting US presidential election history where the incumbents ran for a second term. All these aspects are given in editorial which are self-explanatory. So just read through the editorial once. Now we have not discussed about the election process of Indian president. We request you to go through our Hindu News analysis dated 15th May 2020 wherein we have discussed in detail about the office of the President of India. This is all about the discussion of this editorial. To summarize, we have compared the office of President of the United States with the office of President of India, and we also saw in detail how the US President gets elected. Let us move on to the next news article. This news article is about the decisions taken and the predictions or the projections made by the newly appointed Monetary Policy Committee of the Reserve Bank of India. If you remember, yesterday we discussed in detail about the Monetary Policy Committee and the appointment of the 3 new members by the central government. So this new Monetary Policy Committee evaluated the domestic and global macroeconomic and financial conditions, and it has taken several decisions. So let us see some important decisions taken in this Monetary Policy Committee which is relevant from exam perspective. The relevant syllabus is given here for your reference. First, the Monetary Policy Committee has said that the economic growth may break out of the contraction mode by January to March 2021. That is, in the 4th quarter of the current financial year. What is this breaking out of the contraction mode? It is basically the economic growth will come out of the contraction, which is right now what we are facing. If you remember, in our first September analysis, we discussed about the estimates of GDP for the first quarter, that is from April to June 2020 of the current financial year. During that analysis, we saw that the Indian economy is witnessing its worst contraction in decades, where the GDP has shrunk by record 23.9% in the first quarter. But now, this Monetary Policy Committee has noted that several indicators are pointing to the easing of contractions in the various sectors of the economy and pointing to the emergence of growth impulses. That is, slowly the economic activities are reviving across various sectors. So don't think that economy will grow in a very vigorous manner. The contractions will be eased. That is why this Monetary Policy Committee has predicted that for the current financial year, that is 2020-2021, the real GDP is expected to decline by 9.5%. So what this means? Normally, GDP is reviewed from 2 angles. One is real GDP and the next is nominal GDP. If you look at real GDP, it is calculated in such a way that the goods and services are evaluated at constant prices and these prices remain fixed. Or we can say real GDP is the economic output of a country that is adjusted to inflation. So it reflects the value of all the goods and services that is produced by an economy in a given year, which is adjusted for inflation, that is the price changes. So because of this, if there is a change in real GDP, we can be sure that it is the volume of production which is undergoing changes. On the other hand, if you look at nominal GDP, it is an assessment of economic production in an economy, but it includes the current prices of goods and services in its calculation. So here in nominal GDP, it is not adjusted to inflation. That is, inflation is not taken into account or consideration. Hence, nominal GDP is simply the value of GDP at the current prevailing prices. So this is the difference between real GDP and nominal GDP that you need to know from exam perspective. Here, know that without real GDP, it would be difficult to identify just from examining the nominal GDP, whether the production is actually expanding or it's just a factor of rising per unit prices in the economy. Now, the prediction by the Monetary Policy Committee means that the volume of production may decline in this financial year when compared to the previous financial year. That is, the total output may decline. Further, with respect to a business cycle, this could mean that economy might go into recession if decline continues, because a sustained period in which real GDP is falling is a recession. So this is number one. The next important decision by Monetary Policy Committee is on the policy repo rate, which is nothing but the repo rate. As you know, the Reserve Bank of India does the open market operations to influence the money supply in economy. Here, the term open market operations refers to the buying and selling of bonds or securities that is issued by the government in the open market. Now, when the Reserve Bank of India buys the security, there is an agreement of purchase with specification about the date and price of resale of this security. So, this type of agreement is called repurchase agreement or repo, and the interest rate at which the money is lent in this way is called the repo rate. That is why we say repo rate is the fixed interest rate at which the Reserve Bank of India provides overnight liquidity to banks against the collateral of government and other approved securities under the liquidity adjustment facility. See, this overnight repo rate in the liquidity adjustment facility window is fixed by the Reserve Bank of India during its monetary policy announcements, and this is considered as the policy rate. That is why it is mentioned as policy repo rate. So, policy rate is the key rate that is based on which all the other short-term interest rates move, and it is the key lending rate of any central bank of a country. In our case, it is the Reserve Bank of India. So, the previous policy repo rate was 4%. Now, in this meeting, the Monetary Policy Committee decided to leave the policy repo rate unchanged. So, even now it is at 4%. Further, if you see, the Monetary Policy Committee also decided to continue with the accommodative stance of monetary policy as long as necessary, especially during the current financial year and maybe even during the next financial year. Here, what is this term accommodative monetary policy? See, it is also known as loose credit or easy monetary policy. It usually occurs when the central bank, that is in our case RBI, attempts to expand the overall money supply to boost the economy when the growth is slowing down. So now the current accommodative stance of the Reserve Bank of India is to revive growth on a durable basis. So these are some of the important decisions taken by the Monetary Policy Committee, and this is all about the analysis of this news article. Now have a look at this practice question. Let us move on to the next news article. This news article talks about this year's Nobel Peace Prize goes to the United Nations World Food Programme. It has won the prize for its efforts to combat hunger around the world and improve conditions for peace in areas affected by the conflict. So in this context, let us briefly discuss about the Nobel Peace Prize and also about the World Food Programme from exam perspective. Before that, let us look in brief about the Nobel Prize. See, Nobel Prizes are the prizes that are awarded annually from a fund which was given away for that purpose by the Swedish inventor and industrialist Alfred Nobel. The Nobel Prizes are widely regarded as the most prestigious awards given for intellectual achievement across the world. And we have the Nobel Foundation, which is a private institution that was established in the year 1900. The ultimate responsibility for fulfilling the intentions of Alfred Nobel is being carried out by this Nobel Foundation. So as a part of this, Nobel Prizes are given across various fields: physics, chemistry, physiology or medicine, literature and peace by the Nobel Foundation. Here, have an idea that there is an additional award which is called as Sveriges Riksbank Prize in Economic Sciences, which was established in 1968 by the Bank of Sweden in the memory of Alfred Nobel, and it was first awarded in the year 1969. Although technically it's not a Nobel Prize, it is identified with the award, and its winners are announced with the Nobel Prize recipients, and the prize in economic sciences is presented at the Nobel Prize award ceremony. So this is in brief about Nobel Prizes. Now talking about the Nobel Peace Prize, it is awarded by the Norwegian Nobel Committee. Know that it is an independent 5-member body that is appointed by the Norwegian Parliament. Until now, a total of 101 prizes were given in this category. Many great personalities like Martin Luther King Jr., Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela, Kailash Satyarthi, etc. were awarded Nobel Peace Prizes. If you see, Kailash Satyarthi is an Indian social reformer who campaigned against child labor in India, and he also advocated the universal right to education. So he received Nobel Peace Prize in the year 2014 along with Malala Yousafzai. And now in this year, that is 2020, the Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided to award this Nobel Peace Prize to the World Food Programme for the year 2020. So in this context, let us see in brief about the World Food Programme. See, it is the world's largest humanitarian organization and the food assistance branch of the United Nations. It was established in the year 1961, and in the year 1965, this World Food Programme is enshrined as a fully fledged UN program. So it is one of the programs of United Nations. See, the World Food Programme's efforts focus on emergency assistance, relief and rehabilitation, development aid, and special operations. In emergencies, the World Food Programme is often first on the scene, providing food assistance to the victims of war, civil conflict, drought, floods, earthquakes, hurricanes, crop failures, and natural disasters. One of its main agenda is zero hunger, and in seeking to end hunger and promoting wide partnerships to do so, the World Food Programme works across a spectrum of sustainable development goals. Its focus areas include climate action, disaster risk reduction, gender equality, nutrition, smallholder market support, social protection and safety nets, sustainable livelihoods, ecosystems, etc. So it works across a spectrum of sustainable development goals. See, this World Food Programme is a multi-stakeholder organization. Now, talking about its funding, remember that its operations are funded by voluntary donations from the world governments, corporations, and private donors. Next, the World Food Programme is governed by a 36-member executive board. It works closely with its two Rome-based sister organizations, the Food and Agriculture Organization and the International Fund for Agricultural Development. Now, talking about the World Food Programme's engagement in India, know that it has been functioning in India since year 1963. According to the country strategy plan for India 2019 to 2023, this World Food Programme aims to enable the most vulnerable people of India to meet their minimum food and nutrition requirements throughout the year. Now, have a look at this practice question. Let us move on to the next news article. This news article discusses about the first indigenous anti-radiation missile that has been developed by DRDO. It is called Rudra M1. So in this context, let us have a brief understanding about anti-radiation missile, and then let us look in brief about Rudra M1. Know that an anti-radiation missile is a kind of powerful weapon with the functions of detecting, interference and destroying, which can attack and destroy enemies' radar and electronic facilities. Typically, these are designed for use against enemy radars by a country. The primary purpose of this type of missile is to degrade enemy air defenses in the first period of conflict in order to increase the chances of survival for the following waves of strike aircraft. They can also be used to quickly shut down unexpected surface-to-air missile sites during an air raid. Here, it is to be noted that since the middle of the 20th century, radars have been destroyed by anti-radiation missiles. But over the decades, the radars have been modified and modernized. So, in order to cope with this, new types of anti-radiation missiles have been constructed and different exploitation techniques have been developed. See, anti-radiation missiles can be divided roughly according to their range into short-range missiles, mid-range missiles and long-range missiles. The range for short-range missiles is maximum 100 km, whereas in case of mid-range missiles it is maximum 200 km, and long-range missiles have a range over 200 km. We have given some of the anti-radiation missiles and their parameters for your reference. Now coming to the first indigenously developed anti-radiation missile, the Rudra M1. It has been developed for Indian Air Force. It has been developed by the Defence Research and Development Organization, that is DRDO. It is basically a joint effort involving DRDO labs, the Indian Air Force, then Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, that is HAL, and several public and private sector enterprises. See, this missile is integrated on Su-30 MKI fighter aircraft. So this fighter aircraft is the launch platform for this missile. See, this missile has a capability of varying ranges based on the launch conditions. It has INS GPS navigation with passive homing head for the final attack, and it can hit the radiation target with pinpoint accuracy. See, the passive homing head, which we just saw, can detect, classify and engage targets over a wide band of frequencies as programmed. So this missile is a potent weapon for Indian Air Force for the suppression of enemy air defense effectively from large standoff ranges. So with this, India has established its indigenous capability to develop air-launched anti-radiation missiles for neutralizing the enemy radars, communication sites and other radio frequency emitting targets. And as this news article says, this Rudra M1 has range of up to 200 km depending upon the launch conditions. The missile can be launched from altitudes of 500 meter to 15 km at speeds of 0.6 to 2 Mach. So remember, this missile has a capability of varying ranges based on the launch conditions. This is in brief about the discussion of this news article. Now have a look at this practice question. Let us move on to the next news article. This news article is in connection with nationwide citizen poll that has been organized by the National Butterfly Campaign Consortium. The primary purpose of this poll is to submit the names of special, unique and important butterflies to the Union Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change to designate a national butterfly. See, India is home to over 1,300 butterfly species belonging to 6 butterfly families. The butterfly families are primarily found in northeast India, then across Western Ghats and various other mountainous and plateau regions. If you see, several countries such as Malaysia, Taiwan, Indonesia, Bhutan all have national butterflies. Though in India we already have national bird, national animal, even national aquatic animal, then national flower and national tree, we still do not have national butterfly. See, butterflies are important as they are indicators of healthy ecosystems. This is because they are found in wide varieties across various biodiversity hotspots wherein rich and diverse flora and fauna are found. And they form a vital link in the food and life chain as they become prey for birds and insects. They are also important because of their role in pollination. And butterflies are known for their unique wing color patterns and designs which have inspired various forms of art, fashion and culture. Another speciality is that they are known to anticipate environmental hazards and pollution. Now let us come to the citizen poll which we saw initially. Through the platform of National Butterfly Campaign Consortium, butterfly specialists have derived these criteria for selecting the national butterfly. So just have a glance of the criteria. Now based on these criteria, the butterfly specialists arrived at a list of about 50 butterfly species, and from these 50 species, 7 species were shortlisted as the contenders for the designation of national butterfly. These species were shortlisted by voting of all the members of National Butterfly Campaign Consortium, and the citizens were asked to vote for one of these 7 species which they thought should be designated as national butterfly. The 7 species are given here for your reference. Now this news article reports that out of these 7 butterflies, these are those 3 butterflies that are the front runners as per the results of the poll. They are Indian Zesbel, Krishna peacock and orange oak leaf. The special fact about Indian Zesbel is that it tastes bitter to its predators. This is because as a caterpillar, it feeds on plant toxins and chemicals. Now, if you look at the speciality of Krishna peacock, it acts as a flagship species for biodiversity and conservation in the face of climate change in the Himalayas biodiversity hotspot. And why this name? Because this butterfly is as beautiful as a peacock. Now coming to the speciality of orange oak leaf, its underside resembles dried leaf, and this helps this particular butterfly to camouflage to escape from its predators. So you can remember the speciality with its name as oak leaf. So just have an idea about the names of the butterflies that are mentioned in this news article. Why? Because if you see in last week's UPSC Prelim 2020 examination, there was a related question about the lesser known birds with reference to India's biodiversity. Let us move on to the practice questions discussion session. This first question is about the qualifications for election as President of India. The first qualification is he or she shall be a citizen of India. Yes, this is correct. Then he or she has completed the age of 35 years. Yes, this is also a qualification. The third qualification given is he or she is qualified for election as a member of the Council of States. This is wrong because as per Article 58, it should be the Lok Sabha. That is the House of the People, not Rajya Sabha. So here the correct answer is option C, 1 and 2, 1B. Now look at this question. Consider the following statements with reference to Indian economy. Look at the first statement. It tells that nominal GDP is the value of GDP at constant prices. This is incorrect because during our discussion we saw that real GDP is the value of GDP at the constant prices. And it is the real GDP which is adjusted to inflation. So this makes the second statement an incorrect statement. Now look at the third statement. It tells that open market operations include both outright purchase and sale of government securities for injection and absorption of durable liquidity respectively. Yes, it is correct. Now we need to choose those statements that are incorrect. Since the first and second statements are incorrect, the correct answer is option B, 1 and 2, 1B. This question is about the World Food Programme. Look at the first statement. It tells that it is a specialized agency of United Nations. No, this statement is incorrect. It is not a specialized agency of United Nations. Now look at the second statement. It tells that World Food Programme focus area includes climate action, disaster risk reduction, gender equality. Yes, it is correct as we saw during our discussion. The World Food Programme works for the Sustainable Development Goals that include climate action, disaster risk reduction, gender equality, etc. Now we need to choose those statements or statements that are incorrect. Since the first statement is incorrect, the correct answer is option A, 1, 1B. This question is about Rudra M1, recently seen in news. Look at the first statement. It tells that this Rudra M1 is a space weapon developed to destroy satellites for strategic military purposes. This statement is incorrect. It refers to Mission Shakti. See, in the month of March 2019, India tested an anti-satellite weapon during an operation code named Mission Shakti, and the target of that particular test was a satellite that was present in the low Earth orbit. But this Rudra M1 is the first indigenously developed anti-radiation missile, as we saw during our discussion. So the first statement is incorrect. The second statement is correct. It is developed by Defense Research and Development Organization with the support of several public and private sector enterprises. So here the correct answer is option B, 2, 1B, since you need to choose those statements or statements that are correct. Now look at this question. The question is with reference to India's biodiversity, Indian zesbel, Krishna peacock and orange oak leaf are. Here the correct answer is option D, butterflies. Here also I have an idea that though India does not have a national butterfly, as we saw during our discussion, there are few states which have state butterflies. And there was even a question in 2016 prelims, and here the correct answer was option D, Maharashtra. Now, which are those states that have declared butterflies as state butterfly? Try to find out and post it in the comment section. With this, we come to the end of the analysis of all the news articles taken up for today's discussion and also the practice questions discussion session. If you like the video, press the like button, comment and share, and do subscribe to Shankar IAS Academy YouTube channel for latest videos and updates. Stay focused and motivated, friends. Thank you.